Hi. I said,
Hi, Fallon. Hi, you. Hi, colleagues.
I see your hands up. Hey, Zai, I'm here. Let's see. Okay. Hey, colleagues. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this call. We'll be taking a few minutes to wait for our colleagues to join, and probably in the next 5 minutes, we'll be starting our webinar. So as we wait for our colleagues, as we wait for the rest of the people to join the webinar, we can start getting to know each other. We can start introducing ourselves in the chat. Just tell us who you are, where we're joining from, your organization. Let's get to know each other as we wait for the rest of the colleagues to join us. Um, can you see me? I'm seated right here in my space, and I would love to thank every one of you. I want to greet again every one of you who is on this call, on this webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining, and welcome to our MenEngage Africa SRHR Learning and Exchange webinar. This is one of the webinars that are building up to the MenEngage SRHR Symposium we are planning to have in August in Nairobi this year. My name is Zaitun Inavatirega. I work with Sonke Gender Justice as a gender transformative approaches specialist, and I'm going to be a moderator for today. We have a very, very lively and a team of experts that are going to be part of our panelists today. But before we start, please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. Let me see who is in the chat. We're saying hi. I think you need to do something and see how the chat is a bit disabled. Our tech person, please support on that. Please go ahead and do and ensure people can really chat and say hi. Let me just check and see hi, everyone. We have Fallon on the team. We have Ontla. We have, these are the people that have just said hi. Please go ahead and say hi and greet everyone on the platform so that we get to know who you are. I think also before we start, I would love to share our agenda that we have for today. I can see Emma from Malawi. Good to have you on the call. Good to have you on the webinar. We're going to have welcome and introductions to the webinar, and then we shall have an overview of the MenEngage Africa SRHR Learning and Exchange Symposium, a glimpse into the vision and the discussions and everything that is going to be there. And then after, we're going to have powerful voices. We have colleagues from different parts of Africa who have been implementing SRHR programs, and they're going to share with us their best practices, their experiences, their challenges, and I'm really, really excited when we get to that. And then after that, we're going to go into breakout sessions and touch base with these panelists and touch base with the people from the different parts of Africa and parts of the world to share the best practices, to share the challenges, to share how do we move forward with the SRHR agenda in Sub-Saharan Africa. Let me just go to the chat and see who is there. We have Samuel from Zambia. Good to have you around. We have Harajimana from Burundi. Good to have you around. Thank you for joining the call. We have Wells. Wells, great to have you on the call. I know Wells. We have Margaret. Thank you so much. And a lot of other people are saying hi on the call. So Fallon, are you ready? I would love to call you to come and introduce and say hi to everyone before I introduce my panelists, and also share with us a bit about the MenEngage Africa Symposium that is going to happen this year in August in Nairobi. Over to you, Fallon.
Hey everyone, hey Zai, thank you very much. Thank you for the
Can you
warm
share your
welcome.
video if that's possible? Just a
That
glimpse
unfortunately for me, okay, let me see if that will work.
just a glimpse so that people get to know who's talking to them. Then you can take it off.
Yes, sure. Now I'm having a very terrible cap. People don't laugh at my cap. Hello everyone. Yes,
Hi,
this is
Fallon.
Fallon. I hope you can see me. Hey everyone. So I'll struggle to leave it on, but my network is not burst. That is why I wanted to keep it off. But then I'll just give a brief overview of the symposium so we know, like we have in our mind and ask questions and anticipate for the day for those who haven't yet registered anyways. So this symposium is going to be under the title SRHR Progress 2024. which is them promoting the realization of sexual reproductive health and rights and gender equality. We are pleased to have this symposium in the vibrant city of Nairobi, Kenya. I hope we have Kenya people here anyways. And it's going to happen from August the 12th to the 14th, 2024. And this symposium is powered by MenEngage Africa. So a brief background of it all, the main purpose is going to be to advance comprehensive sexuality education, ensure discussions around safe abortion, and also we're trying to highlight the voices of the youth very much in this symposium. So it's backed by the MenEngage Africa SRHR strategic plan for 2023 and to 2027, which is focusing on the link, learn, improve, and influence. So we all know that one of the reasons is because Africa is still facing significant challenges with regards to SRHR. That is why one of our main rationale behind this symposium is to create a platform where we want diverse practitioners and diverse policymakers, community gatekeepers, young people, people with disability to come in and engage. And we really want the youth, the voices of the youth to be really, really represented during this symposium. We also want to bring the review of the policy environment, identify gaps, and boost discussion around the barriers and of implementation and the shrinking spaces that we are all witnessing around our various or in our various countries. So it has so many objectives that I've already mentioned a little bit to identify gaps and reinforcement within SRHR frameworks. Want to also highlight best practices related to male engagement in SRHR and advocates for a coordinated regional response to harmonize SRHR practices promote cross-country learning and strategic resource allocation. So it's targeting the MIA partners, young people, people with disability, civil society organization, policymakers, government representative, healthcare workers, academic researchers. So you should anticipate to meet all of these persons within this space, as well as religious and traditional leaders. So I will just give a brief on how this symposium is going to be. We are going to have panel discussions, workshops, site events, abstract presentations, as well as a TV show. It's going to be an outdoor TV show that's going to showcase informal discussion and diverse voices. We're going to have training workshops and roundtable conversations. So just to conclude, our goal is really to unite diverse stakeholders and to foster collaboration to advance SRHR and comprehensive sexuality education across Africa. So we aim to promote scalable models. There are going to be innovative applications from youth on how to better address SRHR challenges and promote gender equality. Thank you, Zai. I think I'll end there and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Before you go away, Fallon, is registration still on or it's done? Because people on the call need to know.
Yes, so as at now, registration, it's the deadline has passed, but if there is any other update around maybe extending registration period, that will be communicated on the website. We also have a web page which I will share on the chat on specifically for the symposium. I'm going to drop that on the chat now.
All right.
Thank you, Zai.
Thank you so much, Fallon. And now we have an idea of what the MenEngage Africa SRHR Symposium is all about. And we are excited. But I think for me, what really touches me is that in this symposium, we want the young people's voice to be heard. It's a platform for young people to showcase what they have done, what they can do, and how they can drive the SRHR agenda within the region. So now, like I mentioned earlier, you see, I'm not even comfortable in my seat. I'm excited about what is going to happen. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a team of experts. We have a team of people in SRHR that have been implementing a lot of SRHR work. And I want to introduce them. I don't know if Fallon, you have that picture that you can throw on the screen. And probably when I introduce someone, it would be nice to put on your video so that at least people get to know who's part of the panelists for the call today. I'd love to introduce Seth Nimwesigwa, and he's a lawyer dedicated to pursuing gender justice and the right to health through research, policy advocacy, and strategic litigation. Seth is based in Uganda at the Center for Human Rights for Health, Human Rights and Development, CEHUT, and served as a policy advocacy officer. But also, Seth serves as a co-chair for the Generation Gender Global Youth Board. Seth, please come and say hi to people, wave to them.
Hi, people. Hi, colleagues. You are welcome. Yes, my name is Seth. You've really done justice to the introduction. And I'm looking forward to engaging everyone who has made the time. Thank you very much. We look forward to this time together. Thank you.
I'm so excited to see what you're going to share with the rest of the team. And then the next on the panel is called Gisina Shongwe. He's a youth and gender advocate. He's a founder, he's a young person, but he's a founder and executive director of the United Youth for Sustainable Global Eswatini. He serves on the European Union in Eswatini Youth Advisory Board. He's also the coordinator for the MenEngage. He's also the youth coordinator for the MenEngage Eswatini. And currently, he's the new chair for MenEngage Africa Youth. And he's also an alumni of the yearly. So welcome, Gisina, and please say hi to the people on the call. Yeah. Gisina, are you there?
Thank you, Zai. I hope I'm audible enough. Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Looking forward to having a better engagement with all our participants here. Thank you very much.
Great to have you, and I'm really, really excited. I believe everyone is excited about whatever you're going to share with the rest of the team. And we have our colleague, she's called Ontla Mese. Many times I call her Ontla, her name is a little bit long. She's a youth leadership coordinator working with Sonke Gender Justice, and she really works closely on a daily with the youth-led organization in the regional programs and youth wings in MenEngage Africa countries, ensuring that there's really, really meaningful participation in implementation, in decision-making and capacity strengthening within the MenEngage Africa network. Welcome, Ontla. Please say hi to the colleagues online.
Thank you, Zai, and good day to everyone. I look forward to meaningful engagements. Over to you.
Thank you so much. We were supposed to have our colleague, if time allows, she'll join us, but if she does not join us, myself and Ontla will do the sharing for her, but we were supposed to have our colleague, Martha Kavma, who is the regional SRHR specialist working with Sonke Gender Justice, and she works closely to ensure the SRHR agenda is integrated within our programs within Sonke. And she also supports regional programs like the Poetry's program that is implemented in about 7 countries in Africa and Asia. So on behalf of Martha, I want to say welcome to every one of you, and let's get to the panelists. Okay, so who should I begin with? Gisina, are you ready? Yeah? Gisina, are you ready? Or should I go to Seth?
Okay, thank you, Zai. I think
Yes.
I can go. I think I can go first if you can just share the presentation. So
Fallon, can you do that for us? And he's gonna share on a lot around meaningful engagement of young people, especially in SRHR interventions. Over to you, Gisina. And you have about a maximum of 7 minutes to do the sharing. So please give it justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, colleagues. So as introduced, so I'll be looking around the young people's involvement in SRHR, basically looking into the current challenges faced by the young people whilst accessing SRHR, then also try to bring around new strategies or innovations that we can adopt to promote meaningful involvement of young people in SRHR services. You can go to the second slide, please. Okay, here I just made a component of a full or a comprehensive SRHR program, which include menstrual health, maternal health, CSE, which is comprehensive sexual education, and also safe abortion, GPV, HIV, harmful practices, and sexual diversity. So a full component that seeks to address SRHR services, seeks to bring that one. So colleagues, here are the current challenges faced by the young people whilst accessing SRH services globally and in our region, which is Africa. First, we are faced with punitive policies, the punishable policies which promote inadequate access of young people to SRHR services. We all know that our policies are still a barrier limiting young people to access those services, in terms of saying young people are still limited by age, which is incorporated in those policies. For instance, when a young person wants to access a contraceptive at the age of 12, due to those policies that are punishing young people, the healthcare workers will eventually deny that young person from accessing that services because of the age that is outlined in the policy. Number two, the higher unemployment rates and increased risk of poverty in young people compared with the general population. This further hinder their access to sexual and reproductive health and rights service access. We all know that to access some of these SRHR services is costly. So due to lack of employment, mostly in young people, then you find out accessing that services is very hard, and affording it is very, very hard for young people to access that kind of a service. Number three, it is ageism. I use the word ageism in replacing of stigma and discrimination. Lack of capacity of proper capacity building within healthcare service providers on the health agency and SRHR needs for young people, thus hindering the accessibility of young people to friendly healthcare services. We all know that young people, when trying to access these kinds of services, due to their age, you find that they are turned back from those healthcare services because you find out a person of the age is around 50 is servicing a person of 12 years. She or he or they doesn't know the health need of that particular young person. So you find out that young person is turned back, or they refrain from accessing that kind of a service. Lack of respect of SRHR as a basic and fundamental right. As enshrined in all human rights treaties, SRHR remain a basic need for every human being. So regardless of their age, and regardless of their sexual orientation, they are always needed to basically access that kind of a service. We are in a cultural and a religious and societal countries whereby culture, religion, and societal perceptions on sexual reproductive health and rights are used. By culture, a young person is not allowed to do or to engage in sexual intercourse or sexual activities at the age of 12. So we all know that young people now are sexually active at the age of 12. So when you deny that young person at the age of 12 to access the sexual reproductive health and rights services, it becomes a challenge because those young persons are sexually active at the age of 12. So religion also is another barrier because we all, like in the African continent, by religious perception, they say you do not have to engage in sexual intercourse up until you are married. Hence, wise realistically, young people at the ages of 12 are becoming sexually active. So denying them that access to sexual reproductive health and rights services also become a barrier. Number 5, it is the parent and family support. Lack of support within families and the lack of a table whereby young people will voice out their sexual state or their sexual health needs also is another barrier. So colleagues, I'll just look around how we can bring in innovation or some strategies we can implement to ensure young people are participating. So number 1, it is capacity building of different sectors. The health sector, policy and decision-making bodies, duty bearers and parents and caregivers on the SRHR need for young people, since these are most opposition or those are the most backlashes in our work. So bringing them for capacity building will also strengthen and enforce that they are aware of the SRHR needs for young people and are also aware of SRHR as a human right. Inclusion, involvement of youth in decision and policy reformation platform that affects their SRHR needs, edge of consent. So we need to make sure that in tables where decision and policy is made with regard to sexual and reproductive health and rights, we need to bring in young people and we need to look around the sexuality and the right of the young people. What is the age of consent actually? When do I say yes? And when do I access that kind of a service? Also, investing in youth-led innovation, insufficient funding for youth programs, a scarcity of mentors or guidance, and obligating young people to take unpaid roles in political processes hinder the participation of young people. So we need to look around investing in youth-led innovations. Young people globally have stood up to take the space to service their peers, to bring innovative ideas, to strengthen the needs of their peers. So investing in their youth-led ideas is also a strategy we can use to bring in young people, because probably there is this slogan that we normally use: there is nothing about us without us. So for young people, it needs to be done by young people because it becomes friendly for all of us to access a kind of a service. Number 3, number 4, the simultaneous review and amendment of policies to ensure inclusion of youth SRHR related issues. We need to do some reviews and amend policies that are punitive and that are pushing young people away from accessing SRHR services. We need to ensure that within those policies, there are issues related to youth. There are issues that seeks to address the SRHR needs for young people, building alliances, partnerships that will promote SRHR as a basic right in communities. We need to build alliances, partnerships within communities, with all the community sectors, the healthcare providers, the policymakers, the decision makers, to promote SRHR as a basic right. Establishment of youth-friendly healthcare corners is also another strategy we can use. And also we need to understand that SRHR is a human right and it's a freedom for every person. I think, colleagues, that's all I can share. Thank you very much, Zai. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Gesina. You really managed time. You're very good at time management. So I don't know if any of our colleagues has anything you wanna I can take just like one question or two to Gesina, or you can write something in the chat. You can raise your hand and you just say hi to us, and we hear what you have to say. One or two people, then we can go to the next panelist. Anyone in the chat? Let me see who is in the chat, at least to say hi to people here. I see there's someone from Peter Davinson from Malawi. Thank you for joining us. I can see Patrick Kachulu, Peter Mukuka. Thank you for joining us, guys. On the call, yeah. Okay. Do we have any comments, any questions for Gesina, or you're waiting for him in the breakout session? So if we do not have any questions for him, let me see in the charts. Someone is asking, are we able to share the presentation? I think, Fallon, you can share a link of the presentations there so that people can be able to access them. Thank you so much, Samuel, for asking. Right now, I want to invite Ontla. Ontla is a youth coordinator working with Sonke Gender Justice. Ontla, are you ready to share with colleagues on the call?
Thank you, Zai. I am ready. However, I will just speak to my presentation and make sure that I send it to Zai. I hope that's okay with colleagues.
That's fine.
All right, thank you. So, as already mentioned, my portfolio is on youth leadership. And the basic role of that is to ensure that young people throughout the MenEngage Africa region in the different programs that we have, being PTY, being Generation Gender, are meaningfully engaged and are seen as equal partners in implementation of projects. And I love that Lena has already foregrounded the conversation about the need to recognize SRHR as a basic human right. So what I'll be doing is taking it a step further to talk about what really meaningful and inclusive youth participation is through the lens of SRHR, what we have been able to do as MenEngage Africa, and also how we can improve or attend to the challenges that Glenna has just alluded to through the use of an approach that we called the gender transformative approach, which luckily Zai is here on this call with us and can also chip in later on in the discussion. So, as already mentioned, I focus on meaningful and inclusive youth participation. And you might be wondering why it's important to have MIYP in SRHR. And firstly, that is because young people are the most affected demographic when it comes to the issues that we talk of. Gunnar did a brilliant job to talk about the different components of SRHR, your menstrual health, maternal health, CSE, and all of those. And when we talk about something such as menstrual health, which we commemorated last month, we know that young people are forced to stay out of school because of period poverty. And so these are the issues that we talk about when we say there's a need to have young people being involved in such issues, because as a demographic of over 400 million within Africa, being people who are between the ages of 15 and 35, it's important that their voices are not left behind. Also, we say this a lot as young people that we need to be engaged because we bring a lot of innovation to the response on different issues. And we can do that when we talk about SRHR. And as we're looking at the build up towards the symposium, we're going to see the different innovative ways that young people are coming up with to respond to sexual reproductive health and rights gaps. And that's very, very important. It shows us that if we have young people at the table, that it's going to be important for us to advance the rights. And then lastly, we know that young people don't exist in isolation. Once we're able to reach out to young people, they can reach out to more young people who are from diverse backgrounds and in different geographical locations. So it's important that when we talk about MIYP, we zone in on inclusivity, we zone in on the different subsets that we have within the young people, understanding that they're not just a homogeneous group. So that's why it's important to have young people being engaged in SRHR. Now, in terms of what we have been able to do to promote the engagement of young people, the strategy that Fallon spoke to that was developed last year, the MEA SRHR strategy, has a strong focus on young people. But it doesn't just have a strong focus on young people. It was developed with consultation with young people to get their voices, to get their experiences, and make sure that the strategy does speak to them. Because oftentimes, some of the strategies that are developed without the input of young people. So we're proud to say we're able to develop this strategy with input from young people. We also, as MenEngage Africa Youth, have a strategic partnership with Frontline AIDS, who are very strong on SRHR and are very strong on talking about issues of young people living positively. And that strategic partnership has allowed us to enter into learning opportunities about how to engage young people in the HIV response. Next month, as we go to the AIDS conference, we're hoping to collaborate with them on different events to make sure that our voices are stronger, because that is why we have such strategic partnerships. We also have the MenEngage Africa Youth Declaration, which was developed last year, where the young people are making pledges and demands. And one of them is on SRHR to say, we're going to make sure that we leave no one behind as young people. We ensure that young people in all their diversities are engaged in SRHR and have access to SRH services. We also have the symposium coming up next, in August. And as Falon mentioned, the focus here is on young people. So this is again another platform to put young people at the forefront to ensure that they are meaningfully engaged. So now with the challenges that Bina spoke about norms and values and ageism and restrictive policy, as an organization, we believe in using different approaches to make sure that we promote MIYP. And one of them is the gender transformative approach, which basically aims to address root causes of inequalities, and making sure that there is a change around rigid gender norms that lead to those inequalities. And within GTA, there are 6 principles which can be used to promote MIYP. Firstly, is the one that Gina has already spoken about, to say we need to view SRHR as a human right. So there's what is called the human rights-based approach within GTA. But also we look at MIYP as a basic right, which is enshrined in the Conventions of the Rights of the Child. Secondly, there's also how GTA addresses harmful gender norms. And already through programs such as Power to Youth, we're working with, your gatekeepers to see how we can transform these gender norms that emanate from religion and culture. And also through GTA, we address power relations, because we already know that already young people don't yield a lot of power. Power still rests with the adults. And so how do we address those power imbalances? Also, there's the issue to amplify the voices of adolescent girls and young women. Again, when we say that young people are greatly affected, when we do further disaggregation, we see that adolescent girls and young women are more affected. And so we ask ourselves, how can we make sure that we amplify their voices? So we design programs and activities that ensure that young women and girls, their voices are heard. But at the same time, as we work with adolescent girls and young women, there's also the need to strengthen the role of young men and boys, because they are powerful allies and they have the ability to also drive influence that we want to see, because at the end of the day, we want to see transformation. That's why we say gender transformative approaches. And lastly, there's the issue of embracing sexual and gender diversity. And that's really, really important, because as already mentioned, within the scope of youth or young people, we have different kinds of sexual diversity and also sexual orientation. And so it's very, very important to ensure that as we structure these programs, we take into consideration those types of demographics. So that is how, as MenEngage Africa, we continuously ensure that we promote meaningful and inclusive youth participation in the SRHR space, but borrowing from different approaches such as the gender transformative approaches. So with that, colleagues, thank you. I will make sure that I share the presentation, and also in terms of the strategies and the declaration that I've alluded to, they can be found on our MenEngage Africa website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ontla. Thank you so much for sharing with us on how you're really, really pushing the agenda amongst the SRHR agenda amongst young people. And for me, you mentioned things that were really, really touching. When you say meaningful youth inclusion and youth participation, I'd love to throw a question to the colleagues on the call, how are you meaningfully engaging young people in your organization, in the different spaces where you are? Are you bringing them as attendants, as participants? How inclusive are you? How are you socializing the young people wherever you are, so that how are they accepted in our communities? Do they believe in them that they can be agents of change? So this is a question I want to throw to you as somebody on this call, but also if you have any comments, if you have any question in regards to what Ontla has shared with you, please just raise your hand. I need just one or two people, and then we go to the next panelist. I don't need to talk alone. I need to talk with every one of you. You need to show that you're really part of this call. Anyone who wants to say something? I see a hand. Let me see who this person is. From who? Your name is Richard. I don't want to pronounce it. Please go ahead. And pronounce your name well so that I can call you well. I can pronounce it well. Yes? Elise? Good to have you on the call. Do you want to say something in about a minute? Yes, Elise.
Sorry, I just wanted to, I was struggling, couldn't find my mic. No, at this stage not, but I'm glad that the presentations would be shared. Since I got the invite late, so I joined late. That is all for me for now.
All right. There was a hand from Chatangalala. Hope I pronounced the name well. Please go ahead and say something.
Yes, that's Wales. I don't know how the Chatangalala thing got there. Otherwise, I introduced myself as well. I hope
But
you
you
can
see
hear
your
me.
Chatal something, yeah?
I'm sorry for that. I don't know how it got there.
No, it's
Sincere
fine.
apologies.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is Wales from Mayor Malawi. On the question on how we are actively and meaningfully engaging the youth. So as Mayor Malawi, we've actually, you may wish to know that we have youth-led structures, the Mayor Network for youth in all the areas that we're working in. The idea is to provide a safe space for the youth so that they can actually voice out their concerns. They can actually give, their thoughts in terms of how the services that we're talking about here are delivered, the quality and the access to the services, and how they think certain bottlenecks can be addressed in terms of service delivery, more especially the areas of sexual reproductive health. I think, was it Onta? I think she mentioned that we have a situation where a young girl presents herself to a medical facility. So the age of 12, 13, 14. How possible is it that the medical officer or the medical practitioner at that particular health facility is going to welcome this little girl or this young girl and offer the services that she requires? Oftentimes, we hear stories like, the medical practitioner reached out to the parents of the girl to say, but your daughter was here looking for, say, emergency pills, looking for condoms, looking for what, and culturally, socially, in most of the families, that wouldn't be acceptable, and it limits the youth access to such kind of health facilities and health care services in terms of reproductive health. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Wells, for sharing your experience from MenEngage Malawi. And I see Samuel is saying, for our MenEngage boardroom initiative, which is a safe space for boys and young men from 10 to 24 years of age, we have allowed the leadership made of young people to come up with their own solutions or ideas to implement youth-focused interventions. This model has worked well for us for a couple of the last couple of years, and we have seen a strong sense of ownership and monitor programs. That is really, really nice. Thank you so much for sharing. I see a lot of colleagues online. Rumbi, thank you for joining. Fanelo, Ochan Godfrey, I see Luke, I see Hazel Moraka. Thank you so much for joining and being part of this call. So now I want to turn to Seth from Uganda. What do you have to share with us, especially around SRHR, engaging young people, engaging faith leaders? Over to you, Seth.
Thank you so much, Saitun and colleagues. Interesting contributions coming in from the audience, but also from the colleagues that spoke earlier. Very exciting that we are learning, having the opportunity.
Do you want to put on your video,
to...
Seth, so that they see who's talking to them if it's fine with you?
That's okay, Zai.
Great. Wow. Yes.
Not sure the face is pleasing. Hope no one is intimidated to leave the call. But yeah, I think I picked interest in the last, I think, comment you are reading from, is it the chat, of someone who was talking about how have created the space for young people on the board. I mean, gauging from what the colleagues have shared from the start, I will really just share the example of Uganda, but just to acknowledge for sure that the space for young people at the decision-making table is limited, it's really limited. And if there's any young person that you work with or any young person on the call, what I would say is that any given opportunity for real should be utilized optimally because at that point you are representative of so many other young people who are struggling to have a foot in at the decision-making table. So the people that you represent, you have to really be accountable, but also noting that many times as young people, we want fast results. So for example, you might hear from that colleague who shared that there's a young person on the board that if I am advocating for something as a young person, I need to be patient, but also accounting for that space because it's limited now that you're there. And you know that it's not difficult for many people to get there. You have to show and evaluate what you're doing there so that when we are speaking about intergenerational or convincing the experienced or the older persons to give that space, they are convinced that when you're there, you do the right things. But without digressing so much, the experience from Uganda, once again, I represent the Generation Gender Program. And as earlier introduced, I also have the privilege of sitting on the Global Youth Board that manages streamlining of meaningful and inclusive youth participation in 7 countries in the world where this Generation Gender Program is implemented, both at governance level, but also in the day-to-day work. We want to look at whether we are being inclusive. I mean, answering those questions of yours, Zai. Are we being inclusive? Are we really just speaking about MIYP or living it? Is it a way of life? Is it a way of our work? Or we are really just touch and go speaking about it? So in the Generation Gender Program, we have acknowledged that the topics often sexual and reproductive health, but also gender equality, especially the contested issues of gender, that is sexual orientation, gender expression and identities, and sex characteristics are very often, which are necessary for inclusion, are very often controversial, for lack of a better word, controversial. And what we have done often, and I'm sure this you can relate as well in your different countries or areas of work, that once you look at the target groups that you deal with, you've decided to call them opposition. These are mainly religious and cultural leaders because they hold, especially in the African tradition, those values that are conservative in nature, but are also difficult to penetrate or break down, especially as far as access to SRHR and gender equality are concerned. And I'm sure this is something that you really relate with. So what we have done in the program, just to share the best practices, that in the Generation Gender, we've noted that yes, this opposition exists, but we can also be oppositions. So for example, if you say that a church leader is opposition, but we are the people who go to church. So what we have done in general intentional on first things first, designing advocacy strategies. An advocacy strategy is like a plan. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Who is standing in your way? Who is for you? Who is against you? So with that, we have mapped the, mainly I'll just talk about the religious and cultural leaders as in the areas that we work, because without a doubt, they hold a lot of power. They hold a lot of influence. They have big audiences that they influence, and that often trickles down to hampering, affecting either negatively or positively, depending on how they communicate access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, especially for young people. So what we do is that once we have identified these, what we normally like to call opposition, they include the interfaith, or you can call them interreligious councils, elders councils, and they have given us that space, or can I say like inroads into like crucial partnerships, because you'll find that some of these spaces are also, in terms of MIYP, or meaningful and inclusive youth participation, are also doubling as intergenerational. They are openly occupied by people of a certain, age. So what we are doing is that use the power and voice of young people to penetrate some of these faiths. So what do we do at first? Once we have at least space to engage them, the first things we do is to do what we call values clarification and attitude transformation exercises. So these are like, for those who do not heard about these exercises, oftenly shortened as VCATs. These are, how can I call them, like workshops to encourage participants to explore their assumptions on contested issues like abortion, and say you examine your role in as a leader, assuring safe access to, say, abortion care. So it makes you understand the critical importance of, if it were you in a certain state, or if it were your child, or etc., what are the consequences of denying access to safe abortion? And what are the consequences if you are on a weighing scale? What is the consequence of leading to a safe, rather an unsafe abortion? Because often what they preach is calling it sin, access, calling it sin. I mean, if someone did an unsafe abortion and they died and you call it sin, honestly, you who let them die and someone who let them access a service and, accessed care and for example, stayed alive, who would you think would be serving better? So what we have also done is to utilize, because often what they preach, utilize what they preach to promote positive narrative. We have got space, crucially, what we have celebrated, for instance, we got space where young people are allowed in certain churches to, through dialogue, of course, to negotiate for this space, to allowed to be part of the sermons. I don't know how you call it in different faiths or religious gatherings, but where I come from, we call it sermons. So there's this sermon of the Good Samaritan. I'm sure you've probably heard about it, the Good Samaritan. For those of you who read the Bible, heard about the Bible, there's in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 20, I think 5 and onwards, about a group of people who asked Jesus that, what can we do, Master, to obtain eternal life? And then Jesus goes, love your neighbors, you love yourself. And this is what religious leaders preach every day. Love your neighbors, you love yourself. And then there was a lawyer in Jesus' time who said, was Jesus. But who is my neighbor? And then Jesus goes, there's this story of a man who was descending from Jerusalem to Jericho, got hit by thieves. The first person to arrive was a priest and was a Levite. None of them helped. And these are religious leaders until someone random who then became the Good Samaritan arrived and helped and, clothed the man, gave them care. And then Jesus asked the lawyer, okay, among those, who do you think was a Good Samaritan? Who was a neighbor? And then the lawyer says, oh, of course, I think the last one. So often we use that to challenge religious leaders, and they have really accepted that if you really want to judge a girl who has just committed, rather, they become pregnant, for example, and you call it sin instead of directing them to access care, to access, services. If you call it sin instead of providing a service, are you really being a good neighbor? Are you really attaining eternal life? Are you really? So there are those positive religious narratives, and they have sort of given us that partnership with the religious, often conservative, but if you use their weapon against them, then it's easier, and it has set the ground for us. I can give so many other examples, but I think that has been crucial for us, and now we have space in those powerful spaces of the interfaith and interreligious to ensure that the sermons or the teachings that they give are progressive in nature in terms of access to equal opportunity for young people, for different vulnerable groups like sexual and gender minorities, like young girls seeking SRHR services. And we can call anyone, whether it is a Muslim or leaning to what faith, and that has been important for us in all the areas we work. And that's something to build on, to influence every one of the congregations that they represent. So we do not anymore look at them as, opposition, like we call them, but allies. And someone has talked about that partnership and, the importance of working in networks and movements to promote sexual and reproductive health rights. So that is the power of, young people and engaging these often contested spaces. I can stop there for the Zaitun and maybe get any questions related to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth, for sharing. And I like the approach you're using of the religious narratives, the religious preachings and teachings. You can also add on the cultural narratives, the cultural proverbs, the sayings in our culture, in our traditions that we can use as platforms for really promoting access to SRHR services and information in our different contexts. Thank you so much, Seth. I see we are running out of time. And if I follow off for any reason, because down here where I am, power has been off since morning. Fallon will be taken on just in case anything happens. But right now, I want to open the discussion to the entire team, to the people on the call. I see, Luke, your hand is already up. Luke, how are you? Please go ahead and say something. You can throw the question to Seth, to Gisina, to Ontla, to anyone. Thank you so much. Luke, over to you.
Thank you so much, Zai, and our panelists. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, I'm glad to be part of this engagement, and I really want to thank the panelists for what I've shared with us so far. My name is Luke Trace J. I'm the country coordinator for MenEngage Uganda, and I want to really contribute in what Sis shared. And I like the way they're engaging the religious leaders, because we know these religious leaders, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of influence, they own a lot of, I may call them institutions. They have, for instance, they have health facilities, they have schools, they have radio, they have TV stations, they even have churches. So they have a lot of power that they use to really influence people. And like the way he said, there are some who have always labeled to be opposition, but at the end of the day, like for me, when I've been interacting with them, some of them actually don't understand what we do. And when they don't understand what we do, and we also don't reach out to them to understand why they think what we are doing is against maybe the norms and values, at the end of the day, we shall keep conflicting and we shall not understand each other, and we shall always call them opposition. So I'm really happy that Tess and team, just like we have been doing a straight talk, they are trying to reach out to religious leaders and have that mutual discussion to understand. For instance, there are some religious leaders I know who have been against young people taking contraceptives, or even taking up family planning methods. But like when you reach out to them and you have a discussion one-on-one, and you challenge them and you tell them to understand that, imagine this is your daughter who had this challenge, and she decided, she chose to take up this maybe contraceptive and so on. How would you feel? So I don't know that they see these things, but sometimes they need more time to be talked to, so for them to understand and appreciate the essence of this SRHR issue that we discuss. So it is important that as we do all this, of course, some will always oppose us, but let's not sit down, let's not keep watching, let's push on and engage them. They may not accept or agree to what we tell them the first time, the second time, but along the way, they're going to change their attitudes. Thank you so much. Over to you, Zai.
I think Zai might have dropped off. She has some electricity challenges. Thank you very much, Luke, for sharing. I also see a couple of comments so far. Okay, I see another hand. Yes, Samuel.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. Hopefully, I'm able to get what I'm saying. Yeah. So
Yes, sure.
basically, I just want to appreciate the presentation from what Safe has highlighted, especially when this perspective, because I also want to give sort of a practical experience. It was just last month when I had a privilege in terms of attending a stakeholder engagement meeting where we were unpacking conversation around issues of comprehensive sexuality, as well as the transitioning process to the life skills health education program. I must attest that we had an open conversation to a point that I think when the clergies as well as the traditional leaders are meaningfully engaged, I think others, their doors are open in terms of ensuring that young people have a say around those conversations. But also we still have those who are standing to be opposition in terms of this engagement within the chiefdom. And what was really interesting during the deliberation is that we had to hear stories within the chiefdom whereby they have created a network which is sort of championing and also reporting issues of gender-based violence to ensure that even the chief is aware about all those, and as well as returning adolescent girls and young women who sort of engage themselves into unintended early marriages, which was a great interesting part that we had to hear on that particular time. But also, I think from, is it Chisin? Sorry, pardon me with the pronunciation. From the first presentation, I think she spoke about issues of adolescents being engaged, sexually active, even at as early as 12 years. But my question is, I just want to get some insights in terms of it could be in the in-country perspective on issues around age of consent. What is the discussion around? It could be, or at MenEngage, what are some of the progress that are being made in terms of those conversations? Because in my country, I think those are some of the conversations we've been having, and it has really been sort of a debatable conversation as it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Samuel. And for panelists, do you want to throw a little bit of light on Samuel's questions? Asi, Seth, Ontla?
Thanks, Fallon. I would just want to maybe come in with the general experience from being the Secretariat for MenEngage Africa. So the issue of the age of consent, we have had partners who in their countries, the age of consent wasn't congruent with maybe the Children's Act. Luke, if you could mute. So a lot
Kandi
of the
mwaka gini wenda
organizations
kutere mu
within
weekend
the,
kakabale.
excuse me, colleagues. Luke, can you please mute yourself?
I'll just
Niwe
mute
niko
him now.
ndakuzaire.
I just did. Yes, until I continue.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was saying that a lot of our partners in these countries have lobbied and advocated for the age of consent to be raised to 18. And one such example, I know that a lot of the colleagues in Malawi were part of making sure that the age of consent is now 18. I think what Dina was speaking about is a situation where the law says one thing, but then in reality, something else happens. And so we need to say, because it's already happening, how do we respond to that such that we don't have young people being further affected? But Dina, you can also come in and maybe provide a country-based perspective. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Asi, do you want to come in? Or if not, we have another hand from, I'm sure I'm doing this correctly, Chatang Halala, if that is correct.
Apologies
Yes.
once again. I sent my apologies to Zai for the difficult name. I think I was having problems to register, so I don't know how that name came up. It's my name, of course, but
Oh,
I
so
don't
this is not even your name.
It's mine, but then it's not the one that I
Okay.
normally use for such meetings. So apologies
No
for that.
worries. No
But I
worries. You
wanted
don't need to
to,
apologize. Yes, go ahead, please.
yes, I really wanted to echo sentiments made by I can't remember the speaker who actually spoke on engaging traditional leaders. That indeed it is true. In just like elsewhere in Malawi, we regard traditional leaders as people who amass a lot of power, and people believe them when they say, this is what God is saying to me, and they stand on the podium in church on the pulpit. People believe them for whatever they say. So they have a large audience which we can actually use to pass the messages that we're talking about, including the sexual reproductive health and rights messages. I remember in one of our sessions where we're talking about access, accessing abortion in government or private hospitals. And this was a group of religious leaders, and I was asking them to say elsewhere, a young girl with her mother, aged 10, presented to health facility to be pregnant. And the mother really did not know what to do about this young girl at the age of 10, but she's pregnant. What did the health facility do? In Malawi, abortion is too restrictive. So she was sent back. And I was asking the traditional leader, how would you feel if this daughter was yours at the age of 10? Would you, accept to have the pregnancy all the way to 9 months up until the time that she's going to deliver? Or you'd really want something else to be done? So they said, no, we cannot keep that kind of a pregnancy. The girl is so young. So I said, what else would you do if not keeping it? No, and then we'll find other ways of actually handling it. And of course, suggestively, that would mean they would go and seek abortion elsewhere. So all I'm saying is that taking these matters head on to religious leaders and have them put, on the armor of a lady or a woman, a mother who has a young girl who is pregnant. How else would you love to have that case handled if it were your daughter? So when you present these issues in that kind of a way, they begin to understand that they're human beings first before they are men of God in whatever, callers they wear. But their fathers, their uncles, the traditional, how would they feel to have that kind of a situation within their home? Because sometimes it is very easy when you talk about it in a situation where it has happened to your neighbor, it has happened 2, 3, 4 houses from your house. But when it is right in your house, it becomes a problem. And so this is how in Malawi we've tried to engage traditional leaders head on sexual reproductive health and rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cha, I'll just call you Cha because I don't want to get it wrong. Thank you very much, Cha. Yes, that's very true. Even though we're running back on time, you really see the need of engaging religious and traditional leaders, how it's really playing a pivotal role in our in changing community attitude, as you've mentioned, as well as Said mentioned in his presentation. We have another hand from Nyoni. Yes, Nyoni. Yes, Nyoni, you have the floor. I think we have some challenges with Nyoni trying to speak. I disabled him. Allowed. You can try again, Nyoni. Oh no. Okay, now you keep getting disabled. I don't know why. But anyways, we have a couple of uh, responses and questions in the chat box. We see Rumbi who has posed the question. Please take a look at the chat box around how are young people making use of regional mechanisms and regional economic communities in their collaborative advocacy efforts. As we ride along with the conversations, let's also think about how young people are using these spaces for their advocacy efforts. Son Terry also had a comment on, okay, thanking the presentations and talking about when individuals have control over their reproductive choice, they are better able to pursue education, employment, and personal goals, leading to economic independence and social empowerment. I agree with you on that. And also Jude mentioning how they use the clubs approach in schools and out of schools, where these clubs are capacitated with leadership skills and empowerment on SRHR, as well as skills on GTA, which they apply when engaging young people. This approach is replicated among women and men in communities. Thank you, Terry Eves and Luke, for sharing. Yes, do we still have a hand of questions for the panelists? Please throw them in. Yes, Nyoni, I still see your hand up. I have enabled you to talk. I don't know why you keep getting disabled. Allowed to talk. Okay, maybe you can use the chat box then, Samuel, if this isn't working. I don't know why. Please, do we have any other comments to our panelists or contributions or questions? Yes, Jeffrey, come in.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay, thanks. This is Patrick Chansa coming from Men of Honor as a program director. Looking at the topic that we're discussing today, all the panelists have spoken very well, and they've spoken, I think, something progressive. However, some churches, I'm coming from the Catholic Church, so some churches will not, no matter how much we will try, especially in Africa, to adjourn. We all remember that in the recent past, the Pope spoke about the homosexuals, and see the reaction of the popes from the bishops from Africa. And the Pope said in Africa is a different altogether. In Europe, they welcomed it very fast. So we have to look at the values and the norms beyond a human person. So if we put a human person as apex of all the rules and the regulations, then we won't have a society that will be respectable and we have norms and values. So when we are championing SRH, the issue is not SR, the issue is the rights. That's what I've discovered from the way we started championing and talking about this. The issue is rights. The other letters are okay. The only thing that has not sat well, especially in Zambia, is the rights. At one point, we had the permanent secretary from the Ministry of Health who clearly indicated and released the memo to say we should remove the rights. So meaning when we are talking of the rights, we are saying a person can decide today to become homosexual, and the society should say, well, it's your choice, it's your life. Another one will come tomorrow and say, okay, I want to be a lesbian, and we say, okay, it's your life, it's all right. At the end of the day, the generation will stop growing because each person will decide what to do at any particular time. For instance, if we say, okay, fine, let's continue allowing the children, if they become of age, pregnant, let's them go for abortion. We all know the implication of abortion. We might say today, no, it's safe when you are done from the clinic, but we all know again the other implications. It can either be helpful or it can also damage your womb in the long run. Also, we are getting examples from China, who also came up with a policy of one child. So there are a lot of abortions here and there, here and there. At the end of the day, their population has failed to balance because they have got more males than females. So they are having shortages of whom to marry. And then their culture also doesn't encourage intermarriages. So you discover at the end of the day that we are creating problems that we have to come and resolve in future. So how we are entangled, me as a Catholic, I'm entangled in between. What should I tell the child tomorrow? Or why should I tell the child between the faith? Now, when we are talking of the Catholic Church, I know it's one of those that will never change these things so fast and so quickly, especially in Africa, because it's constitutional. Now, for them, since it's constitutional, it's like the way we have in our country's constitutions. It's not easy to change them. However, these are affecting the population at large. So what is the best way that we can approach this? For me, lies the question. You remember when we started the ABC, the churches were open to that. The churches were open to that because it was not interfering in the production of life. But the Catholics still stood firm on the condoms. So we might find that in as much as we would want to engage certain churches, there are certain churches that will not so much twist their faith, not because it has to do with faith, but it has to do with their constitution. So as long as we are mingling with these people from other areas, we need to be mindful of the way we are programming when we approach the churches. The programming is also important. As I said earlier on, you can't go to the Catholic Church with your lined up program saying we are championing contraceptives. You already know it's constitutional and they will not agree. But when we go there to say we are talking about how a girl, a young boy is able to keep themselves away from indulging themselves into these activities that can lead them into pregnancies and other areas, they welcome you. So also the packaging. Let's see how we are packaging when we are targeting certain individuals or certain organizations, basing on who, what is their values, what is their mission. For the chiefs,
that's very much.
Yes, for the chiefs it's easier, but again for countries, there are countries that don't allow homosexuals or lesbianism, and such countries, when you program, when your packaging is saying let's have human rights in terms of sexual rights to each and every particular person. For them, what comes into their mind is this particular person is free to say, I can be homosexual, I can be lesbian, when their constitution doesn't allow. So let's see how we package and we unpackage the information when we meet the very people that we are targeting. In that way, to help us. As rather to say we go there with the notion to say, okay, our program is SRHR, then they ask you, what is the right?
That's very true. Thank you very much, Samuel, for sharing that experience. It's very insightful, and I would just want Seth to come in and throw a little bit of light to what you've just shared and to some of the questions you've highlighted. I know he mentioned some of the strategies on how you can engage these leaders, but then yes, welcome, Seth. You can just throw a little bit of sentences to that.
Thank you so much.
Hello?
Sam, do you wish to mute for the meantime? Oh, thank you so much. Fellow and colleagues, allow me appreciate where I think he introduced himself with a different name, but I can see Samuel Nyoni from what is
Yes.
listed. Yeah. I really appreciate his contribution, and that is true. It's difficult to penetrate because, and like I said, it's also important to be respectful from both sides. Mutual respect is very important for buy-in. If I were to ask a question to, I will use the name Samuel, because that's what I see, I think, on his on the list. Is that the church, and I'm also proud to be a Catholic, by the way, is that the principle, the neighborhood principle is really paramount. Love your neighbor as yourself. So whether you look at a poor person, whether it is a gay person, whether it is a child, just that principle alone will always guide us. And on the question of rights, I must echo these colleagues that human rights from time immemorial, whether it is today, whether it is 100 years ago, human rights have always been a product of struggle. There's nothing granted. Human rights are never granted on a silver platter. If I can use the example of South Africa, the racial segregation, but also in the US, for example, racial segregation was ended in the years around 1954, but it still happens. I mean, in 1954, there was this famous case of Brown v. Board of Education, where children of Blacks were not allowed to move in the same school vans with whites. And I mean, people from South Africa probably relate more to this. Or even earlier than that, in around the 1800s, there was this Dred Scott case in the Supreme Court of the United States, whereby slaves were regarded as property. And I mean, it was, imagine if that slave said, I have a right to, determine myself as a human being. At that time, the people of the US were looking at, no, you're not a human being. You are property. What do you mean? You're going to spoil our US culture. You're going to spoil our US norms because we bought you. Now we have to use you the way we want. So it's never granted. It's never granted, whether you want it or not, whether you would want to stick to sexual and reproductive health and stop. Anything that is a service definitely gives rise to a right. If you want food, you have a right to food. So access to food gives you the entitlement to food. The entitlement becomes a right. So whether it is in the policy of, he said, Malawi, or even here in Uganda, it's the same thing. They will say, no, don't put rights. It's because, like someone said, I think, was it, I don't remember who, but it's difficult. It takes time to understand, to appreciate from where we are coming from. And it is important that we listen to each other. What is a right? How does it become a right? What constitutes a right? But I'll just leave that at that, if you allow me, because of time. But I also wanted to let someone who spoke about briefly about the age of consent. I must say that around Africa, the laws that have been coming out over time, they have a spirit of, the good spirit, I must say, to protect children from abuse, from sexual exploitation. And so, for example, the rampancy of like defilement, etc., sexual activity that affects the general well-being of children. So it comes from a good place. But now, like a colleague shared earlier, that if you turn to the realities, yeah, so the law is coming from the angle that, we cannot allow a child, for example, to accept on their own to say sleep with a man, yeah, or a woman of mature age. But from the realities is that now these children are actually being harassed with or without their consent. They are being harassed, or something is going on, whether they're exploring, but the fact on the ground is that they are having sex, they are having issues that require their consent. So what should they do? What should they do if they want to access contraception, etc.? So the increasing recognition that, these sexual and reproductive health challenges have arisen these, questions. And it's not just in one country, many countries, researchers in Zimbabwe, everywhere, on lowering the age of consent because it is hampering access to especially essential services like contraception, like, HIV testing, they require you to have a parent, etc. And the stigma that comes around with it. So it's still a challenge, but given your context, you can always advocate for what works for you. I'll just keep it at that for now. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Seth, for that insightful contributions and better ways on how we can tackle these challenges. As we can see, we have a lot of work still to do with engaging these leaders, religious leaders, and the community as well to push forward. I saw a hand on Jeffrey and Luke. Yes, Luke, please, let's be brief. And please, colleagues, could we have just 5 more minutes so that we could take the questions? Just 5 more.
Okay, thank you very much, Fallon and Samuel, for his presentation. But I wanted to remind him that it is true transformation is a process. It does not happen in one day, in a week, in a month. So what we need to do to engage, like he said, we have to pack our messaging very well, our messages very well. When we're engaging young people or these religious leaders and spiritual leaders, let's make them understand SRHR. He talked of the word right. Let's unpack and tell them what the letter R stands for. Which rights are we exactly meaning? Because for them, when you talk about rights, they quickly go to homosexuality, which is not the case. For instance, when you talk about comprehensive sexual education, for them, they don't understand sexuality. It's just the way how someone feels, how someone walks, how someone speaks, and so on, how you feel. But for them, they think that actually, when you talk about sexuality, you are going to teach young people on how to have sex, which is not the case. When you talk about comprehensivity, for them, they look at C as engaging young people into things of sex, things of homosexuality. Yet, for instance, when we're talking about HIV, you are
I think we might have lost Luke there. Maybe we'll just round up and just give a little bit of summary. Like we've seen, we have a lot of discussions around these items. We can see that but then one of the key takeaways is how we use, or we should be able to implement the GTA approaches in every aspect of our implementation, even at our organizational level. We've seen how these challenges keep coming up, and in every corners being by involving youths, engaging religious leaders. So we really see the vital needs of addressing implementing GTA approaches in addressing these root causes or these challenges that we are facing. If you see, the GTA approaches have different segments, at which we had a little bit of time to go into the GTA approaches, where we'll see all the different approaches in GTA. Please try and integrate GTA to transform these dynamics, these inequalities that we are facing in our programming. We've also seen the needs for meaningful and inclusive youth participation, as well as the importance of engaging religious leaders and traditional leaders as well. Please, that is very important. And as we drop off the call, we should try and have conversations. Let's continue the conversations, be it on emails. We welcome that. And we've seen the involvement and empowerment of youth, which all of these falls under these GTA approaches if we really use it efficiently and effectively. So these are some of the takeaways that I really just want to summarize. I don't know if somebody has a very burning questions now, or any of the panelists have something to add. But I will say, we've asked, Ruby asked a question about how the youths are using the resources that exist to do advocacy. I'm sure we'll have a session on that. And I just want to remind our participants that this is a series that it's a 3 webinar series building up to the symposium, and I'm just letting you know that the next session of the webinar will be coming up I think on the 14th of July, and then the third one on the 31st of July, where we'll be talking about FGM and FGM advocacy across the African region. I see some messages popping in here. Okay, it said the participants are welcoming, appreciating your feedback and around the conversation on the preachers and the religious leaders. Yes, please, the panelists, do we have any anything to add? Please don't forget the dates I have mentioned. This is a series, and we have the second webinar coming up on the 14th of July, and then the third coming on the 31st of July. We'll be sharing all this invite, and please populate the invites when you do receive them. Like we see that the conversations it keeps going on and on and on today, so that we will have more inclusive and wider reach conversation with other participants. Back to the panelists if we have any remark or question.
Thanks, Falon, and thanks for taking over after I dropped off. I just want to say thank you to all who attended the webinar, and it was great to also read the different initiatives that colleagues have in their different countries. And I just want to urge us all to continue the conversations going, continue the action, and let's make sure that SRHR is a reality for all, regardless of their backgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antla. Any other comments from our speakers? If no other comments, I would like to thank the participants, and I would like to reiterate that what Antla has just said, and let's just see that it is very vital for us to address these challenges, and we've seen that it requires comprehensive strategies and targeting policy, community engagement, youth-friendly services, and we still have a lot of work to do. So let's continue to engage in these conversations, in webinars and symposiums, so it forms a platform for us to discuss more and see a way forward in pushing SRHR. Thank you very much, everyone. Yes, I see. Please share, engage on conversations. Yes, please. We will do that somewhere. Please, if you have any questions, you could send it in the email you saw in the invitations, or you go to the Sonke email and send. We will reply to you, please. I will be sharing the PowerPoints, but I'm not sure now how do I share the PowerPoints. Maybe you drop your emails that I copy them from the chat. Thank you very much, and have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you, Falon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Falon.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.